Welcome, everyone. It's Viktor speaking. And special welcome to those who are new. And make sure you don't forget to subscribe and like and all those lovely things just to support the channel. Now, today we will be speaking about the annual solar eclipse taking place on the 10th of June 2021. So a solar eclipse occurs when the moon passes between Earth and the sun, and thereby totally or partly obscuring the image of the sun for the viewer on Earth. And the annual solar eclipse occurs when the moon's apparent diameter is smaller than the sun's, basically blocking most of the sun's light and causing the sun to look like just a ring, basically. So this solar eclipse will be visible in northern Canada, in Greenland, and in north of Russian Far East, and some parts of United States as well, especially the northeastern part of United States. Now, this solar eclipse is going to be happening on 19 degrees of Gemini, almost on 20 degrees, actually, just a few minutes away from the 20 mark. Now, probably on a personal level, you will feel this solar eclipse the most if you have got any planets between 15 to 25 degrees of Sagittarius or Gemini. And partially, I feel like Virgo and Pisces will feel it as well. Now, what's interesting about this is that we had a lunar eclipse on the 26th of May. And the lunar eclipse is always connected to a full moon. And lunar eclipses tend to be happening on, it kind of like stirring up some emotions within us. And those emotions sometimes comes like a lightning bolt as well. It sometimes creates chaos. It becomes a little bit messy. However, the solar eclipse is always a new moon, which talks about new intentions, but it really asks you the question, what your priorities are. What are you going to be doing with those emotional situations which might have popped up sometime in May already? So as I said, a solar eclipse is a new moon, so meaning that the sun and the moon are in conjunction. But why is this solar eclipse so special? Because it is also conjuncting Mercury, which is retrograde and is being on 20 degrees as well. So, by the way, if you don't know what solar eclipse means, I would like to also mention that from an astrological point of view, there is the north node or the south node being within about 18 degrees from the sun and the moon. And that's when the eclipse actually takes place. Now, so as I said, it is conjuncting that Mercury retro. And it is happening in the sign of Gemini. So we've got such a Gemini topic which comes up here, which is going to be asking how you use your mind, how you process information. Do you actually believe in things, what you see, or you go a little bit beyond as well? Maybe you gather the data before actually you make any type of conclusions. Gemini talks about gossips and media and trading and business transactions. So are you getting somehow fooled by something? So when Mercury is going retrograde, it always talks about the fact that we're going to have to rethink something. We're going to have to reconsider, reevaluate our mental process. So I feel like one of the major one of this solar eclipse is that, do we actually believe what we see, or we are completely kind of blinded in a sense? Probably it's something which you already know type of things is going to come up for you. Because remember that this Mercury has gone retrograde, or it's going to, well, I'm still making the video on the 11th. So Mercury is going to be retrograde from the 29th of May. So meaning that Mercury has already been on 20 degrees. And whatever happens around that period of time, you might need to revisit that topic. So if it's the question of signing a contract, maybe you should be waiting till the end of June. Or if it's something to do with travel plans, maybe you need to be reconsidering that, and so forth. Now, one of the reasons why there's a little bit of a hardship to this solar eclipse energy is because it is going to get squared by Neptune. And Neptune is the planet of illusions, deceptions, lies, being misled. In many cases, what happens with Neptune is that we are actually, our head is kind of in the clouds. And we don't see what really matters. We just kind of have got the faith. And then eventually what happens is that we get disappointed when the truth comes around. So Neptune is the god of the sea, and basically it talks about boundaries issues. It kind of talks to us about that we are lost somehow. It talks about becoming one with the universe. It talks about the drug and the pharmaceutical fields, the healing, the traditional healing in a sense, so the holistic and the traditional healing. It talks about alcohol, feet-related matters. But Neptune kind of wants to do something, it is dreaming about something, but it doesn't really want to take on responsibility. And therefore, sometimes it's a lot easier with this square to Mercury and the new moon energy that I just lie about it. So we definitely need to be careful with this Neptunian energy, because it, apart from the illusions and the deceptions, it does also talk about that it's time to kind of trust yourself. You're going to have to surrender something, to give up something. Maybe having a little bit of a higher understanding of the universal flow. It is asking you to kind of connect with the energies you can't really see. So look beyond the facts as well, or look beyond what, for instance, the media is kind of giving you, because that's not necessarily the full truth. There is only one truth in the universe, it says, and that's your own truth. But because we've got so much energy going on in the sign of Gemini, it also talks about the fact that we can get stuck in our heads, and that Neptune might be coming with a square to kind of give you faith or looking at the bigger picture as well. Of course, it is a square which always talk about a little bit of attention. So it might be telling you that you don't want to let go of something. You want to be postponing something. There is an important decision you need to be making, and you just contemplate on it for a very long time. So that Mercury retrograde might be telling you that it's time to go back and revisit those topics, re-evaluating the information, what you've got, and then maybe towards the end of the month, we can go ahead and do something about it. But, Neptune, with Neptune, it's definitely going to be a call to trust the universe, because the universe is trying to do its best for you in your life. It is also telling you to kind of envision things, what you want to achieve. It might be the fact, because it's a square, it might be the fact that your own thoughts are somehow playing against you. Is it because you are too pessimistic? Is it because you are walking away from opportunities? So this Neptune might be telling you that it's time to heal that negative way of thinking. The question could be plenty of questions you might want to ask yourself, and when you have got a moment, just contemplate on those. Are you are you ready to learn more? Are you ready to trust the universe? Can you actually retreat and rest sometimes? Because that Mercury retro says that we're going to have to sometimes switch off our brain as well, and only focusing on things which matters the most. But with Neptune, we over-idealize, we have got way too many thoughts, and then we don't really know which one to go for. Can you do actually something artistic? Are you way too much in your own head? Or are you actually lost for words? You don't really know how to speak anymore. You don't know what to say to certain situations. So this solar eclipse can bring plenty of confusing energy, because if you are if you are in your own head a lot, then make sure that you try to open up a different portal. Try to download some of the divine messages. Maybe just pull a tarot card to get a little bit of a guidance. Maybe actually it is talking about the fact that you get caught up in what others are saying, and then you somehow misinterpret those. And of course, it could lead to some type of confusion. Or it might be the fact that someone says something to you, and you kind of misunderstand what they wanted to tell you. And then basically we are going to be having a fallout. But at the end of the day, this solar eclipse can bring some disappointment. Disappointment around the world, disappointment in media, disappointment around travel opportunities as well. So we're talking about a very strong mutable energy, because Neptune is in the sign of Pisces, and Mercury and the new moon are in Gemini. These are mutable energies, and these are talking about changes on the horizon. But mutable energy also means that we're going to have to be adaptable. We're going to have to go with the flow as well. So from a universal point of view, it happens on the Gemini angle, and the previous lunar eclipse was taking place in Sagittarius. These are walking hand in hand. So and these axes very much talk about traveling. So of course, you might want to be booking a holiday. You might want to be traveling somewhere. Maybe actually you feel like they're going to be opening up the doors and the airports and so forth. So let's just quickly book, for instance, a holiday. So with this Neptune, it might be telling you that you might want to be a little bit extra cautious, because make sure that you check whether that place is actually open, or does the travel restrictions are the travel restrictions somehow affecting your travel plans. Or make sure that you get clear about what is required, because with that Neptune, it can be very confusing. You might be actually misinformed. So you might want to be double checking, triple checking with different departments what is actually required, meaning that maybe they tell you, oh, we only need one PCR test, for instance, and then it turns out that you need 5. Right? Or maybe actually one day they tell you something and then something changes the next day. Make sure that you don't forget to buy your tickets, for instance, so you don't leave your ticket at home, and so forth. So with this solar eclipse, there could be plenty of new information coming around, and some of them are all fake news, basically. So it's always better to go to official sites. The new information is coming from the fact that there is a new moon, which is talking about new energies, a new cycle, which is starting. But because we've got so much mutable energy going on at the moment, which talks about inconsistency as well. So therefore, if it comes to, for instance, having a hospital appointment, it can be easily mixed up, or they give a different piece of paper to you what you required, and so forth. So, or there could be misspelling. They misspell your name on an official document, and that causes some type of delays. But with Neptune and the Mercury retrograde, there is always an element of a delay. So, and the problem with Neptune is that basically it rules the clouds. It has got this misty type of energy. So we are not necessarily the most clear-headed. So it's definitely not the period of time when you should be making any type of business transactions, buying things. We might be actually basing our shopping or needs on emotions rather than anything else. Whatever Neptune touches in your chart, it actually dissipates everything. So Neptune is actually being on 23 degree at the moment. Neptune has just started jumping onto 23 degree. So it's a slow planet. It kind of opens up different portals as well. Now, I would also like to mention that Neptune has got a very tight conjunction to a very prominent asteroid called Pallas Athena. And in astrology, the asteroid Pallas represents intelligence. But it's kind of a warrior princess energy. So it is all about strategy. I use my intelligence to kind of conquer the world. So Pallas Athena has got the ability to kind of tackle any type of issues, but this is in the sign of Pisces. So this time around, Pallas Athena can't really see things clearly, even though she is very much about ethics, strategy, methodology. Jesus, this word is actually a little bit hard for me today to pronounce. But she has got this fierce, very logical type of approach to life. And she always wants a little bit of a freedom and peace with that as well. However, now we've got Neptune, which is all about deception. So Pallas Athena tends to be turning up in charts when there is kind of a war on the horizon. And now, don't think for a minute there is going to be a war, but it could talk about some type of clashes. Pallas actually rules wit and weapons. It's something to do with the art of the war, but with plenty of wisdom. So I kind of imagine a very much of an intellectual debate. So I can really imagine, for instance, having some political arguments, and there is going to be like a debate show coming up between two very important people and so forth. And there is going to be mixed messages. Yeah, probably this is the best word to use, mixed messages with that Neptune squaring Mercury. Now, I would always, and at the same time, Pallas Athena and Neptune very much talk about that there is an universal truth, and we're gonna have to get in touch with that universal truth. There is only one truth out there. Now, when it comes on a personal level, basically your perception can be highly psychic. You can be very creative with this. You can be very dreamy, very mystical. Your mystical side might be coming out a little bit more. And your imagination can be strongly active. Maybe it's kind of like a awareness on a different mental level, basically. Now, your intuition can be a lot stronger. You kind of become like a psychic type of energy, like growing those psychic antennas. But it's very favorable for anything to do with music, art, photographs, and so forth. Now, I would also like to mention that at the same time, we've got Vesta, which is another very important asteroid, squaring this new moon. So basically, the new moon is a part of a T-square. So meaning that Vesta and Pallas Athena are actually opposing each other, and both of them are squaring the new moon energy. So Vesta is talking about work, service areas on a mundane level. But on a personal level, it does talk about what we are committed to. And with Vesta, there is always an element of a self-sacrifice. So it might be the fact that we're devoting plenty of time to our work, or there is kind of a higher calling. Maybe it could also indicate that, because Vesta is in the sign of Virgo at the moment, which is again talking about something to do with the medical field. So I can even imagine a little bit of a strike in that department. By the way, Vesta was very much about celibacy, self-denial. So there is kind of this new energy that people might be awakening, that we have had to deny plenty of things from our life. Now, I would like to also point out that there's not only an eclipse happening at the moment. This June is a very prominent month, but we also have got the second Uranus-Saturn square as well. And this time around, Uranus is a lot stronger than Saturn, because Uranus is being direct and Saturn has already gone retrograde, which I am going to make a video about. Now, Saturn is being on the day of the solar eclipse on 13 degree and Uranus is on 12 degree. So it means that within a week time, they will be meeting. So somewhere around the 16th, 17th of June, we might be seeing some type of clashes between the collective energy and the government. Uranus is associated with the freedom. So with all the Gemini traits, what we've got, it's very much about freeing our mind up from any type of political matters, for instance. I do believe with that square, there might be some like riot type of energy in the air, and it doesn't need to be physical. It might be just on a mental level with that Gemini plane, what we are having at the moment. But there is an element of an imbalance between the personal freedom and responsibility, or between self-expression and restriction. So, by the way, this Saturn-Uranus square happens only every 12 years, but the very first time it happened was in 2021, February. And then now we are having the second hit, and we are going to be having a third hit as well. So it's worth going down on the memory lane. What was going on in February? On top of my head, it happened around the 17th of February. What was going on a mundane level as well as in your personal life, because you're going to have to revisit that topic now. And remember, Mercury is also retrograde. So something you're going to have to revisit from basically the beginning of the year. Now, I don't want to be talking about this Saturn-Uranus square so much, because I made a couple of videos about that. So if you want to be refreshing your knowledge on that, go back and revisit this on my channel. But it's definitely about an old system which is clashing with some innovative energy. So it could bring protests. And I would also like to mention that Moon is out of bound as well at the same time. Now, out of bound means that it's like a Uranian flavor. So out of bound is basically when a planet is leaving somehow the sun's orbit. So it's like, when the cats are not at home, the mice come out type of situation. And Moon represents the people in the chart. So it could really indicate that people are kind of having these kind of downloads that we do need to do something. It really talks about that things go out of control. And with the Uranian energy, it's all unpredictable. And we know that Saturn is always resisting. Uranus is the progress and Saturn is trying to resist that. But this time around, I feel like Saturn cannot win, because it's in the sign of Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus in modern astrology, and Saturn is also retrograde. So retrograde means that we're going to have to retreat a little bit. So that Saturn, in my opinion, won't be able to fight back against these new innovations, technology, high-tech type of energies. Now, there is so much to mention, and I said I'm not going to be talking about Uranus, but I do want to, because maybe, it helps you to kind of gain some knowledge over that. But Uranus is kind of like an electric shock in the consciousness. What's interesting about Uranus, let me give you a little bit of a mythological knowledge about that. Uranus was the father of Saturn, and Uranus had a wife called Gaia, whom he impregnated all the time. And as soon as she got pregnant, he always left. And whenever he felt the need to have a sexual intercourse with someone, he went back again. And Gaia kind of got tired of that. And she eventually sent Saturn to kill his own father. So you kind of see this Saturn-Uranus clash going on now, that, you know, we've got an old archetype type of things, which is against some rebellion matters. And, you know, Uranus is something which doesn't necessarily want to be a part of a group, but it has got the ability to tell others what to do. So Uranus is kind of like trying to solve a problem and then it walks away from it. But with Uranus, we always awaken. It wants to revolutionize, it shakes things up. It's a very unorthodox type of energy. So it's definitely going to be bringing back some of the odd and extreme situations into our life. And I think things might go out of hand as well. That's all I want to be saying. And I don't want to be speaking about politics because I hate that. And anyway, I don't want to spice up anyone's mood either. But I do believe that it might be bringing in some bits and bobs in the stock market as well. And in a sense, Saturn is going to be kind of revisiting that, how we can fix it, meaning the government. So maybe the government is going to try to put some extra money into the banks, or trying to put some extra money into the medical fields for additional researches and innovations around, for instance, the COVID situation and so forth. So something around the economy is going to be changing, in my opinion. I do strongly believe that because of Vesta as well and Pallas Athena opposition. So it's all about focusing on what really matters. Now, I might have made a little bit of a mistake, but, well, I don't care. Basically, the whole idea of my channel is to bring you as much awareness as possible about the cosmic energies so you can prepare for them. But what I looked at the US chart. And probably plenty of you are going to tell me, Viktor, why are you only looking at the US chart? What about Australia? What about this and that? And one of the reasons why I look at the US chart is because whatever happens in US, it affects the whole world anyway. So we have to talk about that. And what I can see in the US chart is that this eclipse is actually going to be happening in their 7th house, if I look at the US Sibley chart, and bang on Mars. Now, I don't necessarily like that, to be frank, and that Mars is, of course, being squared by Neptune as well. So it is in the 7th or the 8th house, depending on which type of house system you're using. So if we look at the 8th house energy, combining Placidus and the whole sign, then it really talks about something in the financial market, which is going to be having issues. Now, or if I look at the 7th house, meaning that would be talking about some political matters with another countries. Because 7th house talks about somehow rivalry, other countries, agreements we're going to have to make. And don't forget that Mercury is a retrograde. So Mercury rules anything over postal service and newspapers and publishing and even the embassies, in a sense, trade and commerce. So some of the things which was going on in February, it's gonna have to get, not just in February actually, but since the last Mercury retrograde period, which was happening last year around October, those are going to get somehow revisited. So yeah, it's a little bit of a very confusing time. Now, this was kind of like the beginning of like an introduction of what this solar eclipse means. And I now want to share a little bit of a light onto what this eclipse might mean in each of the solar houses. And I'm going to be speaking about pairs today. And the reason why I want to be speaking about pairs, because you had that lunar eclipse happening in Sagittarius, and now the other side of the chart is getting activated as well. So don't just look at, let's say, your first house, but look at the seventh house as well. So if the eclipse happens in your first and the seventh house, the focus will be on your relationships. So the first house is very much about the approach I'm taking in life. It's kind of like who you are as an individual, what type of mask I'm wearing. And the eclipse, which is, by the way, a kind of a new moon on steroids, so it's like 5 times stronger than any type of new moons or full moons. It really highlights the persona here. So it is asking you to have an element of a personal development and growth so that your relationship could be going better as well. It really talks about something around what I give and what I get from my partners. And it's not just around the romantic partnership, what I'm talking about, but any type of personal relationship I'm creating nowadays. So most probably you are going to be having some very significant changes in your relationship. You might experience some type of crisis situation, which is telling you that there must be a change. And if that change is coming from the outside world, then how am I projecting that onto my partner as well? So it doesn't really matter how kind of it appears to you. But remember that it's kind of never about the other person. It is all about us as well. So it is a call to fix some of the relationship foundations. And maybe it's all about integrity, honesty, in a sense, right? Because we're talking about Gemini and Sagittarius. Are we actually talking about the right thing, or are we just talking about things which is not important, or are we focusing way too much on gossips? Maybe I've heard that my husband looked at another woman because someone's friend's friend told me. So you're gonna have to cut those out and only focus on what matters the most. If the solar eclipse happens in your second and eighth house axis, then the focuses will be on your resources. So we're talking about the second house, which indicates or kind of highlights your personal resources, something to do with your possessions, your skills, your talents, your financial situation, something around your self-worth as well. Now, an eclipse in the second house will always make us more aware of our material attachments. So is it because I want to earn more money and therefore I want to be I want to be finding a new job? Maybe around this time, I recommend not to make any changes. The reason being is because you're going to get disappointed. Do you want to, for instance, take up a loan? I don't recommend it because somehow the banks will screw you over. So that Mercury retrograde is kind of telling you that you're going to have to reevaluate your financials. Maybe you want to be looking at your bank statements. Has a couple of penny got kind of pinched off from you, and so forth? Can I actually survive the next upcoming period of time without any type of bank loans? So it's all about reevaluating and exploring your relationship with money. Am I spending too much, or am I too attached to my money? It really depends on, of course, um, where the ruler of your second and eighth houses are. Now, the eighth house is talking about other people's resources, joint finances, taxes, and inheritance. So, did I actually file the tax matters? Am I expecting to get inheritance? Because we might be disappointed about that. Or are we going to get a bigger like bill which I did not count with, and I have to find ways of how I'm going to get out of that. These axis is very physical and emotional at the same time. So is it because my partner is not earning enough money? Are we trying to invest into something? Maybe actually this is not the month when you should do that. It's this axis is very much about exploring what truly belongs to me and what belongs to my partner as well. We can have some type of clashes in that department also. When the eclipse triggers your third and the ninth house, well, the focus will be on your relationship to the world as well as your local community. Now, the third house relates to our personal surroundings. So, kind of like the third house is always the way how I go to work, for instance, and I always go by public transport, or I always go by car. Now, it might be a time to revisit that. Do I actually need to go by car all the time, or can I take public transport? But also the third and the ninth house is our communication axis. So the third house is more about the practical communication, and the ninth house is more about the connection with the divine. So definitely the significant questions here are, do I actually believe what I hear, or do I actually look at the data and the facts before I open my mouth? It might be telling you that the ninth house is very much about spiritual practices, but we tend to be just talking about them. So the Gemini energy might be telling you now that it's time to put that into some practical use. It might be that you want to be starting again a new business, especially like planning a new course, or you want to be studying something. Maybe it's not advisable at the moment because it might be somehow not something you want to sign up for. So again, you might want to be reevaluating on that too. So the third house is very much about your familiar environment. The ninth house is the unfamiliar environment. So the foreign countries, cultural type of matters, new ideas, your philosophical approach to things, anything to do with travels and religions. So you definitely have to pay attention to any type of travels you want to be making, because there could be a disappointment eventually. So what I can imagine is that you looked up thoroughly that, oh yeah, we can travel here, and by the time you get there, they're gonna tell you, oh, you have to do additional tests, or you need an additional document, or that's not the right visa, and so forth. So there is an element of a kind of a disappointment around travels. I would also say that it could bring some problems around documents as well. So especially around contracts or legal matters. Now, it might be the fact that you want to be submitting a piece of paper and there are spelling mistakes in that and it doesn't get accepted, or your name gets misspelled somehow. And that causes some type of delays and frustration for you. Now, with the lunar eclipse, you were meant to be looking at the bigger picture of your life. What is the meaning to life, which I said was happening on the 26th of May. Now, how am I going to put that into practicality? So I imagined how I want to be growing and expanding in the near future. Now it's all about starting the practical side of it. But it does tell you to reevaluate on your dreams because you might want to be an overachiever. Now, when the solar eclipse happens in your 4th and the 10th house, basically the focus will be somehow balancing your private life with your public life. So the 4th house very much relates to your private energies. So the home, the family, your emotional and spiritual connections to our ancestors and our heritage. So it could actually indicate some type of crisis situation, unfortunately, in the family. And therefore, you are maybe not focusing as much on your career as you should be. And it's going to be affecting your performance there as well. I can tell you, for instance, because I just got to know actually, being very close. Oh, by the way, you can always feel the eclipses 6 weeks before it takes place. Usually when it happens before the actual date of the eclipse, you are not going to be affected after that. But what I wanted to say is that these eclipses are happening in my 4th and the 10th house. And I just got to know today that my mom's sister passed away. And I can't get hold of my mom. I just wanted to know how she feels about this situation because they were very close to each other. Unfortunately, I've never met her sister. So, but you know, I can imagine that losing a sister is always a very, you know, dramatic period, really. So you can, now I didn't want to say that you are going to be losing someone in the family, but there could be a very strong focus on your family, which is affecting your career, which is affecting how other people might portray you as well. So there needs to be an element of a balance going on between your private and your public life. If the eclipse is happening in your 5th and 11th house, then it means that the focus will be on your individual expressions and group participations. So the 5th house very much relates to things that makes us kind of feel special, the fun side of ours, something which makes us feel worthy as an individual overall. So it is highlighting something around your children or even your love affairs. So it might be telling you that maybe you've spent enough time focusing on yourself and you're going to have to focus on your love life a little bit. Or maybe somehow your children are getting highlighted because maybe they have got some issues at school. So the question here is that what type of changes do I have in my relationship with my children? Do they actually feel restricted in one way, right? Do we have to actually have an open, honest conversation about their progress? Do they actually agree with my new partner? Does my child have got some trouble in the romantic fields? Do I have something which we're going to have to solve in our romantic partnership? So meaning that maybe, again, we're talking about the needs here. So maybe my partner wants to be socializing a lot more and I don't want to, or the other way around. And these could be somehow a topic. Now, the 5th and the 11th house is also a business axis. It talks about taking risks and in the hope of gaining something, gaining big amount of money, basically. Now, this is not the month when you should be taking any type of risks. You might also feel that a friend of yours betray you. And it could lead to some type of misunderstanding with a friend of yours, and you might want to be closing the person away, or the friend is telling you that actually you are selfish, you're focusing way too much on yourself, and you don't give enough time to their friends. So there is an element of need to be more in the public sphere as well. If we're talking about any type of creative projects or creative businesses you are participating in, then it does tell you that maybe it's a time to actually have a reflection on whether my products are suitable for the current market. It might be telling you that there needs to be a little bit of a demographic research to be made. And lastly, if you have got the eclipse happening in the 6th and the 12th house, well, then the focus is on your physical and spiritual health, especially if you have got your sun or the moon in one of these houses. Now, this is not necessarily an easy period of time for you because it talks about changing your routines, your health habits, changing your diet. Maybe it's all about going out there and then doing some type of exercise, or maybe I just don't want to be doing my job anymore. I feel like I'm getting like I feel like I'm burnt out somehow. So there is an inevitable change needed to be done in your routines, especially around your physical needs to kind of avoid any type of illnesses. And because it's all about maintaining the soul as well at the same time, which is the 12th house. That's something to do with the cosmic womb. So it could talk about inherited illnesses, for instance, which might be popping up. It might be telling you that it's time to meditate or explore a little bit your unconscious. So an eclipse in the 12th house could really talk about that you need to spend more time alone and re-evaluating your everyday life and how you want to be actually changing that. And shall I focus a little bit more on spirituality? Especially work on these pairs if you feel that you are a little bit depressed as well. So the solar eclipses are always about regrouping and refocusing on something, a special area of your life. And you might want to be looking at the house where it happens, but not only that house, the opposite as well, because that got triggered 2 weeks before the solar eclipse as well. This interpretation is a very small part of the possibilities. So you should consider, where the ruler of those houses are to gain further information. So, for instance, if you have got the solar eclipse happening in your 6th house, then it means that you're going to have to look at the ruler of that Gemini as well, which is Mercury. So where is Mercury? Is that actually trining, sextiling, opposing, squaring my natal solar eclipse? Or does it actually get bothered by an aspect and so forth? So, we can only talk about generals, but no matter what, those topics are in your life, but it gets colored by the ruler of that house, wherever it is in your natal chart. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to see you on my next video, which is going to be about Saturn retrograde. And also don't forget about the Pluto in Aquarius free of charge webinar on the 15th, which will be live at 2 p.m. Sofia, Bulgaria time. So blessed be everyone, and make the most out of this solar eclipse. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.